I think we'll open up the discussion to the audience. So if you'd like to ask a question to the ambassador, raise your hand up high and wait for a mic to come to you. Please only speak once you've got the mic, because this event is being recorded. So we have no idea what you've said if you don't speak into the mic. With that, I think we'll take the first question from the gentleman in the checkered shirt in the front, second row.
Thank you very much. So, Ambassador, I'm researching decision-making in British and Russian government cases on the 2014 Crimea situation. I wanted to ask you two things, if that's okay. The first thing is there anything that you felt wasn't understood by British decision-makers in government as the situation unfolded? And was there any diplomatic attempts to address that? And the second question is, from a Russian perspective, what were the greatest risks in the situation and how were they mitigated? How were they dealt with? Thank you.
It's a bit echo is going on around the whole. Could you simplify your question, please?
The first question is there anything that British government didn't understand or didn't appreciate about the Crimea situation in 2014?
Crimean situation?
Crimea, Crimean.
Yeah.
In 2014, is there?
What about British government? I did not got it.
Is there anything they did not understand?
They did not understand,
yeah.
Yes, of course. They did not understand that the whole population of Crimea voted during the referendum over there. Crimea is populated by Russians. It is 2 million plus something. So 2 million Russians plus some Ukrainians and plus some people from Tartar, which mainly also count themselves as part of the Russian population. So British government still do not want to accept the fact of life that population is in favor of being inside Russia. Recently, Pompeo, State Secretary of the United States, has said, just talking to a certain audience, really, if in Mexico will be populated by the Americans, and if in Mexico they will go to vote to join the United States, I'm not sure what we'll be doing. So this is a situation. He understands, in fact, what it is. So there is a daily fact, the fact of life about Crimea, and there is some hypothetical ideas that Crimea could remain inside Ukraine. Historically, it has always belonged to the Russian Empire, Soviet Union, Russian Federation. So it is now has just a place of its own as a subject of the Russian Federation.
Thank you. The second question was, from a Russian perspective, what were the greatest risks in the decisions that were taken for Russia, from your perspective?
The greatest risks, as I have already talked about that, the risk of war. This is what we are trying to avoid by all means. The risk of arms race, which we are invited to do. So this is what we would like to avoid. We need peaceful and stable time for development. Yes, sanctions were imposed on us by the European Union, by the United States and the others, and they are enforced already for years by now, but we managed to survive. We adjusted our economy. We avoided to use dollar very much in our effort. We managed to raise industry in those branches which were supposed to buy different products from abroad, and by now we are standing on our feet. We are not very much influenced by the world economy, and especially by the of something which is going abroad. Of course, things may happen, but really it is an estimation by the world agencies that Russian economy has no debt. It is very healthy, and it is now well prepared for developing itself. And that is why we need just normalization relations with the other, just to provide more business opportunity for everybody. Please, if you will put questions, please simplify them, because sometimes I do not understand what you're saying.
If we could take the next question from the lady in the black turtleneck on the fourth row.
Thank you very much. So a couple of weeks ago, we had Bill Browder here, and he was speaking about his political activism that started from the torture of Sergei Magnitsky in Russia, which then eventually led to the Magnitsky Act in America. And I asked him what were his thoughts on America's history of human rights violations. So now I want to know, what are your thoughts on Russia's own history of human rights violations, and what is the future of Russia when it comes to that matter?
Human rights violations are going in every country, believe me, and this is not a phenomenon which is specific for China, for Russia, for Iran. There are books and books. We just issued a white book about violations in the other countries. In Canada, they are punishing Indians, for instance, black people in the United States. I do not want to speak about that. It is, you just should take some books which has been already issued. But I would like to please understand who is Bill Browder. He's a fraud man. He's a person who is running from justice. He committed crimes in the Russian Federation because he used invalid people, disabled people. He made them part of the companies, and he profited from this. And he escaped abroad and started to develop these stories about Magnitsky. We know about that perfectly. He got some support, some grants from NGOs, and now he's just promoting his case, trying to be safe in it.
Sorry. Can I just say, I'm not defending him in any way. I also asked him about his own country. So his family is originally from America, and I asked him about America's own history of human rights violation. And I understand Russia and America and other countries are not the only ones that have human rights violations, but I'm asking you about your country and what can be done about it. Because it's a fact. We know Russia, America, even my own country have histories of human rights violation. But I'm not asking you to defend. I'm asking you what is going to be done about it. How is Russia going to move forward from its past and improve its own image for the future?
How we are working on improvement of the human rights situation. We have our own Human Rights Council, which consists of NGOs. We are promoting it. Yes, we are trying to do our best in this field, but this is a very big country. And sometimes we cannot follow every case, what is happening on it. But it is now high in the press, in the mass media. Mass media is working, and this is a power. It has been reflected over there. If things occur which is coming to the newspapers and to it, the most difficult are reported to the president in the end of it. But we work on that. Of course, we are not perfect. Nobody is perfect in this field. But it is a systematic work by the state and by president and by the council over there.
I think we'll take the third question from the gentleman in the front row with the scarf.
Hi, thank you for coming. You mentioned the INF Treaty and its demise and the danger of a new arms race. What steps is Russia taking specifically to extend existing regimes such as New START, which expires next year?
INF. You speak about INF or START Treaty?
New START, yeah. New START, yeah.
New START Treaty. No, there is no New START Treaty. There is an old one, which we would like to prolong. And it's an interesting question. INF Treaty has been designed in '89, exactly, in year '89, I was part of our team of experts who was working on it. It is a very simple and a very nice treaty, I should say, because it is saying that there will be no, in Europe, no middle-range missiles and small-range missiles. Very simple one. And we are big proponents of that. We would like to keep that, but of course, the world moves, the technology moves, and modernization of missiles continues. It is being done in the United States as well as in Russia. We have come to a certain line where this modernization was considered by the other side as a violation. Modernization was very simple. So instead of 2 rockets, we may be able to put on the same launcher 4 rockets. Americans didn't like it, so they started to blame us that we are violating. At the same time, they are preparing now 4 different types, 2 types of cruise missiles and 2 types of ballistic missiles that are violating INF as well. Our best proposal in this field was let's have a 0 option in Europe, so no missile at all. So far, we did not get a response. It's about a year that my president has sent a letter to President Trump about this 0 option, but we do not get a response. START treaty, it is another pillar of strategic stability. START treaty cannot exist without ABM treaty, anti-ballistic missile treaty. It's two things which are very much are coming together. We are for 100% prolongation of the START treaty. United States is still hesitant. They have no decision at the moment whether they are in favor or they would like also to bring it to the earth, to cut it off. So we continue to convince them that this pillar should exist.
I think we'll take the next question from the lady in the middle of the 4th row.
Good afternoon. You started your speech with a reference to the moment when Russia and the West were united in response to the global crisis.
Louder, please.
So I'm just reminding you that you started your speech with a reference to the moment when Russia and the West was united.
Exactly.
In a moment, like united to respond to the global crisis. And from my perspective, now we're also facing the global crisis, which is a climate emergency with the extinction crisis. And don't you think it's a possibility that may be a possibility that country will reunite again to address this global crisis, climate crisis? And if so, what do you think Russia can take a lead on it? And specifically, what is our agenda for coming Glasgow Climate Summit?
I understand your question. We just launched an initiative of a meeting on the highest level of the permanent members of Security Council. And it's a wide discussion. We do not suggest that we shall discuss this, and this, because every country has its own problems at the moment, but most of the problems are common now. The main problem is the division, which UK, US, and France in one group, and Russia and China in the other group. This is bad. If we are going to unite our forces once again, we will manage quite a lot.
I also ask, what is our agenda for this?
What is
our Russian agenda for addressing the climate crisis?
Agenda.
Yeah.
Agenda is simple. Well, arms control in the first place, then crisis management in the second place, because in Syria we should not compete each other. We can do this together. We can do ISIL. We can do it in every other country. We should not play with Ukraine, because sometimes we are trying to implement Minsk agreements and others are trying to design an alternative to Minsk agreements. This is bad. We can unite our forces in order to deal with all these challenges and to be successful in this field.
I think we'll take a question from the gallery, if possible.
Gallery.
Do we have the ability to take questions from the gallery? Perfect. In which case, could we take a question from the member sat in the top right?
Hi, thank you for your remarks. I was wondering if you could tell us who you think gave the order to attempt to assassinate Sergei Skripal.
What is this?
The question was asking you whether you could offer a guess as to the identity of the person who initiated the attack on Sergei Skripal.
Because you are the gallery, perhaps you haven't heard what I have said about that, but I do not want to repeat. Excuse me.
Right. In which case, we'll go on to the next question. If we could take the next question from the gentleman sat in the second row. in the middle, a suit.
Thank you very much. I have a question with regards to the situation in Idlib in Syria. In case of an escalation between the Syrian and Turkish forces, where would Russia stand? Would you support Bashar al-Assad until the end, or what would you think would happen in that situation?
It's a good question. We will stand in the middle in the first place, and that's the whole idea, because we have an agreement. It's a complicated situation in Idlib, absolutely complicated. The problem is that it's a province of Syria, and Syria has, of course, all rights to settle order in it. It has a big population of about 3 million. But inside this province, which is very much populated, there are 30,000 real terrorists belonging to Ashad Nusra organization, which is the same thing, it is just a wing of ISIL over there. Plus, there is a Syrian Liberation Army. This is an opposition. Our talk and our agreement with Turks was that they will work on separation this Ashad Nusra from Syrian Liberation Forces. But they could not separate them because they are fighting with each other. For the moment, ISIL people, the real terrorists, they pushed this Syrian army to the north of the province over there. And the most delicate question is how to exterminate terrorists without harming civilians, without harming people. Things, in fact, for the day is that Syrian army is moving from the south to the north pretty well, gaining villages one by one. But in the west of the province, there is serious fighting. So today is Wednesday, tomorrow, President of Turkey will come to Moscow. He will meet President Putin, how to deal with this extremely delicate situation, because we do not want either to harm civilians or to harm Turks, who has their own interest with the Syrian opposition army over there. Not with the terrorists, but with the Syrian opposition army there.
I'm quite conscious of the fact that we're running out of time, so we'll have 2 further questions from the audience before we wrap up. If we could take the next question from the gentleman right at the back in the striped sweater. In the striped sweater, sorry.
Thank you. I was wondering, to what extent do you think Russia's size is a barrier to its being a more cohesive or unified country?
Once again, please, to extent UK, Russia, what?
Russia's size, its geographical size, is a barrier to being a more cohesive country.
UK is a big country.
The question refers to the size of Russia. Is how large Russia is geographically a barrier to making Russia more cohesive and, yeah, cohesive as a country?
Just look at the map. Russia is big. What else? United Kingdom is big. Well, I used to work in different countries which are of much smaller size. That was Belgium, Netherlands, Austria last time. And in fact, I was amazed and surprised how many people are here. And it is very much like Russia on a smaller size of territory, I would say. Let's put it like that.
I think we'll take the final question from the lady in the front.
Thank you very much for coming here. And so my question will be about the Russian billionaires who are hiding their assets in
Russian
UK.
billionaires?
Billionaires, I don't know, like ex-Russian oligarchs, for example, Euros and other, for example, like trust, ex-trust directors. So what are happening with them now? Because there are some rumors around.
What is happening, you know it is much better than I. One of them has just go into the court here in the United Kingdom. His name is Tinkov. He has made a fortune in Russia. Then he escaped to to the other countries. He changes his citizenship everywhere. He acquired citizenship of the United States, but in 2013 he decided that it is too much taxes he is supposed to pay in the United States, and he decided to withdraw from this citizenship. He has also withdrawn from the citizenship of Russian Federation. I do not know why. The only citizenship that he has had now it is Cyprus. So most of them who has gone here, and I know some names, they have had bad history in tax paying, both in Russia and in the other countries. And it is up to them, of course, to run around the world and to save their personalities and future. In case of very big difficulties, they are coming to the embassy. But so far, this is not many registered cases.
Great. With that, I think we'll wrap up the event. Thank you so much for joining us here today at the Cambridge Union.
Okay.
And indeed, thank you to the ambassador.
Thank you very much for listening to me. I have to say that your questions were better than questions in Oxford. I have to recognize that. Okay.